Hello and welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your break, and I hope that you did indeed go and visit our colleagues and partners in the virtual booths. So we're going to crack on now with our next speaker, who's going to talk to us about COVID, us and the future. I have to say, Helen set the bar really high, so no pressure, Tom. So I'm really delighted to be introducing our next speaker. So Tom Simons, National Chief HR and OD Officer, NHS England and NHS Improvement, and we've just been having a chat in the backstage about the fact that Tom has only recently taken up this role, and he's getting sucked back in, as I think all of us are, into supporting the sort of national effort around the COVID vaccine. But Tom, as many of you will know, has got a wealth of HR and OD experience and expertise, both in the NHS and in a number of regions and sectors, where he's delivered large-scale change, service transformation and improvement in HR services. And he was most recently the Director of HR and OD at Chelsea and Westminster NHS Foundation Trust. So with that introduction, I'm going to say, welcome, Tom, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for that introduction and kind of no pressure then in terms of following Helen. I heard that was a really good session. So I've also got the strange awkwardness of doing this from my daughter's bedroom, and I've only been a few weeks out of my job at Chelsea and Westminster, and feels very strange to be out of that sort of acute hospital environment and doing this new job as the Chief HR and OD Officer at NHS England and Improvement. So I wanted to share some slides so I can see if the tech works. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can get those on the screen. There we go. Okay, so I'm hoping that they are visible to everyone. Yep, I'm hoping they are. Brilliant. Okay, so really the topic that I wanted to talk about was sort of COVID, us, and the future, really. And that's a kind of a big topic to be talking about today, but I think it's an important topic, and I wanted to start by sharing some of my reflections, some of the learning that I've had during COVID, but also that I've heard HR colleagues from across the service, HR and OD colleagues across the service talk to me about. And also I wanted to think about the future and the future of us as HR and OD professionals, but also people's services in health. So this was an important slide that I wanted to share with you. So many of you will know this sort of big important landmarks in London, so the Parliament Building and Trafalgar Square. And funnily enough, both of these landmarks were landmarks that I drove past on my way to work at Chelsea and Westminster during wave 1 of COVID, but they could have been taken from any major city across our country, any major city. And I remember feeling a huge sense of responsibility, and that was really brought home to me. And one evening when I was very late coming in and sat down to watch the news with my wife, to see our politicians on Zoom, and you'll see in the right hand corner of this slide a kind of screenshot of that. I think that's our Prime Minister in the far left hand corner, and realizing that many of them were working from home actually, and having this realization that actually what we need to do in hospitals and in health generally, it's not just hospitals, in terms of provision of care, was what was going to protect our population. And there was no one else but us to do that. And that was a real sense of responsibility that I felt as an individual, but I know it's been felt by HR and OD professionals across the service. And wow, what a responsibility it was. And did we step up to that challenge? So this was the slide in terms of titling it. Is there nothing we cannot do? And frankly, what we've achieved over the last 6 to 9 months and continue to have to do every single day has been truly incredible. We've fit tested thousands and thousands of people. We've opened up huge amounts of additional wards and ITU capacity. And you'll see in the middle of this slide, this slide's actually from Chelsea and Westminster's ITU unit. But it's a picture I really like, because it's not the picture of our terribly resilient ITU staff having done a 12-hour shift. It is the purpose of which they have acted to respond to this challenge. We're walking purposefully into ICU at Chelsea. We've had to face the equality issues in front on, particularly around risk assessments, risk assessing thousands and thousands of staff. We've been the conduits and the people having to deal with the deaths of our colleagues. We've dealt with terms and conditions changing daily, hourly, certainly weekly, and still continue to do that, to looking after the health and well-being of our people. Is there nothing we haven't done and stepped up to? And I think we've shown what an incredibly brave, courageous and brilliant profession we are, actually. And I remember one evening phoning the HR director at London North West, and many of you know Claire Gore, and she was very, very busy, and it was about 8:30 in the evening. I asked her what she was doing, and what she was doing was setting up an ITU ward alongside her clinical staff, showing incredible leadership. And I know that's been replicated across the country. That's just one example that I was close to at that moment. So what have we learned? And I picked up some themes here which I thought were important to pull out. So for me, I think if you'd asked me a year ago what's important, I would have said what's important is ensuring the organisation I am in is as successful as possible. And I think I've changed very, very significantly my view in that. And it's actually a reason why I took the job I'm now doing. I absolutely believe that we can achieve greater benefits for our patients through working together. So the sum of our parts is greater than the individual ones. And that's represented in some ways by ICSs, but I think it's more of a philosophical point about us as a service and how we work going forward. I think one of the things that we have learned is the equality and inclusion issues that many of us were talking about prior to COVID have really come to the fore. They've gone from being important issues to urgent issues. And I think there's a great opportunity in front of us to think about how we can accelerate and make greater ground in this area than ever before. Maybe a frustration that we weren't able to do that previously. I think health and wellbeing has been a significant issue that's come up through COVID, and the focus on psychological wellbeing has really, really changed. I think prior to COVID, we were very focused on physical well-being, but now I think we've learned the importance and continue to learn the importance around psychological well-being. I think that's going to be a feature of many years ahead of us. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, I put a picture of, often the image that line managers have about people working from home, right? It's a sort of easy sitting on a sort of pond, in a swimming pool, with their laptop. So we know that's not true now. And we know actually there is significant change around the provision of digital health, what can be done clinically, remotely, and also the art of the possible in terms of using digital teams, etc., etc. And we also have to work through what the downsides are of that. Also, I think that one of the things we've learned is that we've been very encumbered by compliance and governance as a profession. And we've been able to unshackle ourselves through COVID at times to be more transformational in the way we approach challenges and problems and be less burdened by the rules that have been set for us. There is significant learning that we've taken through this period and continue to as we continue to work through the second wave, and if we have to, the third. All of this obviously is in a context, and I won't try and get the technology to work to share with you these two videos about mega trends around work. But I think we have to think about the future now, and we have to think about what we've learned from COVID, and also what the future of work over the next 10 years will bring. It wouldn't be a surprise to talk about things such as robotics, AI, what kind of work will be carried out and by whom, and what is the human role in healthcare in the future. These are really important issues that we need to think about amongst many, many other megatrends. And I think we do need to challenge ourselves, once we're through this period, to really grasp what the future of work will look like. So I think there is the future of health, there is the future of work, and of course, there's the future of people services and the HR and OD profession as a whole. What I really wanted to use the last part of this presentation to do is to talk about a big conversation that I want to start with our profession, really, about the future of work over the next 10 years. And I want to do that, have that conversation over the coming months, over the next 3 months. And my absolute goal is to have a conversation that touches the 15,000 HR and OD professionals that we have in the National Health Service. And what I'd like it to do is to really, really focus on, on the perspectives, the international perspective, have academic input, to think about the research that drives what's going to happen in the world of work, and to get your unique perspectives on what we need to do over the next 10 years. I want it to have an emphasis on reducing the burden of compliance and governance, and allow us to be focused on the energy and activities that will add the greatest value. I want us to think really clearly about technology to remove some of the burdens that we know exist around our technology infrastructure, and to cast forward a roadmap for the future. I want us to recognise the really amazing things that happen across HR and OD services, and led by our profession every single day. And I mentioned some of them before, but they're really, really important that we emphasise and build on what we do brilliantly, and there is much, much to celebrate. And I also want us to, at the end of that conversation, to come up with some options around investments and our futures, and also about what development we need as a profession. So that's a big proposition to place in front of you. It's a big proposition to place in front of you at a time of incredible pressure. And I asked myself the question, should we do that? Should we ask that question right here, right now? But I don't think there's ever been a moment of greater urgency around our people, and a moment where we are at greater prominence on the stage. I think it is our moment to talk about the future of people. However, we need partners in that challenge, and I want that review of the future to be supported. So I've asked Lancaster University and their well-known faculty to support us, our professional body, Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, and also some of the thought leadership of Ernst & Young to help us with that journey. And so really, they will help support us in shaping our conversation, refining our conversation, and to help us develop a document and roadmap for the future of our profession and our people services in the National Health Service. So what's next? So I really wanted to invite you to become involved and use your voice in that conversation. I invite you to invest some time, that precious commodity that we feel we never have. And I know that from the role that I've just come from, and I know that from the role that many of you will do. But I think it's absolutely important that we do that. I think it's absolutely important we do that to shape the future of our work. So I will stop there and invite comments and challenge to the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Excellent. Lots and lots of stuff in there. You'll see in the chat bar afterwards that some colleagues were saying that they couldn't quite see your slides. So on your behalf, I've said we'd ask you if it was okay for us to share the slides afterwards, if that's all right.
Absolutely, of course. Please share them.
Fantastic, that's wonderful. So we've got some sort of comments down the side, and we have actually got a question as well. But before we sort of just go to those, I know we've got a few minutes yet. Obviously, as being a HRD in the Welsh system, one of the things, just reflecting back on the presentation sort of we've had this morning, and the Stronger Together and the working collectively, I'd just be interested, I suppose, in exploring, you know, whether you've given any thought to sort of looking at this on a four nations basis as opposed to perhaps looking at it, you know, just for England at this point. I know you've got a specific remit, but have you given any thought to that, broadening it out?
Yeah, so I guess my instinctive response is that we need to build from the best we can, and we need to learn from our neighbours in the other nations, from those in other sectors, those outside the UK, and to think about what the future work will look like and what that means for people practice and people services and our profession. So I don't think this is an exclusive engagement. I think this is engagement that needs to draw on the best knowledge and information that we have available to us.
Brilliant, thanks Tom. And if there's an opportunity to get involved directly, then happy to have a conversation offline and just sort of share knowledge. Not least of all because you've got a lot more resources than we've got in Wales, and I'm sure you'll come up with some amazing ideas. So thank you for that. One of the questions that we had in the sidebar was, how do you hope to reduce compliance on governance structures without increasing risk?
So I guess the first thing I'll say is I certainly don't have all the answers. So part of the reason why I want to have that conversation with the entire profession is a sort of for us to calibrate that together. So of course I have some kind of perspectives myself from working as a HRD in service, but we are absolutely going to have to find the kind of solution for that. So what I would offer up though is I think we are for the rules that have been created for the game, we are pretty risk adverse. Okay, so and we're given a set of rules that we work within slavishly, and we do a really good job of that. But the question is at what cost? Okay, and are there other ways in which those things could be done, which would release time and release our efforts to focus on the things that we actually know add enormous value. We're not saying compliance isn't important, because we know it is, but we absolutely know that things like health and well-being, equalities, etc., 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 where we want to put our time and energy into, and so we need to find a solution for that.
And my apologies, the question, you've answered it in the way that it was intended, but it was actually about how we reduce reliance on governance, not compliance with governance, because I think we do have a system which is sort of heavily sort of governed, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think there is a way of us reducing our reliance on governance. I really do. I think the tech is available for that, if I'm really honest. I think it's out there. And you look at some of the exemplary organisations across England who are using tech to deal with compliance. There's obvious examples, Rule 3, and some of the work that David's been leading there. It's pretty incredible around compliance. And I think we can adopt some of that stuff and do it really, really well nationally. And I think that will release a lot more time for us to do things that add greater value.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we've got a lot of positive support for the opportunities to engage in the conversation. There's a huge appetite, I think, to sort of move this agenda forward. I think some of the stuff that you said about looking ahead and the mega trends in work and all of that has really resonated with colleagues. And Dean and Nikki have, as you might expect, said they're, put a comment there to say that they're always happy to support the development of the profession. I assume that you're envisaging working quite closely with HPMA colleagues going forward. No,
we weren't thinking about HPMA. They don't have a role in it. So Nikki will know, and as will others, that I've been involved in HPMA quite a while, and absolutely there's a really, really important role for HPMA to be involved in this conversation and help shape the outcomes of it. So I'm really looking forward to working with Nikki and the team on that.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So that's great. One of the things that I can't see any more comments coming in, questions coming in at the moment, but lots of people sort of supporting perhaps a Four Nations approach, or at least sharing the learning, even if we're a little bit behind, and some support for what you said about governance as well. And linking back to Helen's presentation earlier on, architects of change, Malwina has actually asked a question saying, Tom, going back to Helen's presentation on being the architects of change, what is the overall ambition for the review, and how do we make it meaningful for all people, including patients? Thank you for that, Malwina.
That's really, really good, great question. So, I think that there are kind of 3/4 probably major stakeholders in this. So the HR and OD profession as a whole, and that's probably 50% of the conversation that I want us to be involved in. I think there are staff more broadly. I think there are people leaders, and I think there are patients. Okay, and I think all of them have a right and a legitimate voice on the issues of the future of health, the future of work, and of course what that means for people services and HR and OD professionals. So I think that the engagement and conversation we need to have over the coming months needs to involve all of those. Okay, and I think at the end of it, if there was the outcome I'm looking for, my overall ambition is that we have a document that outlines our what we think the future should look like. We have a clear set of options around how we want to take forward the profession and people services. We have an outline of what the investments might be required to do that and the roadblocks in the way, and we have a very, very clear set of roadmaps of things we're going to do, tangible things we're going to do, the quick and easy, and also the difficult and blooming hard. And I absolutely want something that we really think we can use as a profession to drive forward together, and that we all endorse. Actually, I want something that we kind of feel as a group is about right. We're not going to do it by consensus, but I think it's something that at the end of it we go, yeah, that's a document that we believe in.
Brilliant, thank you, Tom. And I think certainly from my perspective, we've been having conversations with colleagues in Wales, and we're starting to think about looking at the sort of way that we organise ourselves and what we expect from our colleagues across our professions. I think some of our kind of, our role descriptions, our sort of, our what good looks like are so out of date now. They've not kept up with what we expect from a modern professional. So really interested in sharing that. I've got 2 more questions for you, which I think we can fit in the time. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
The first one from Stephen Weeks: what can we learn from the changing role of HR in other public services?
So I think that's a really, really good question. So one of the things that I'm starting to think through is, well, look, what are the comparator organisations? Yeah, and that's that's a really interesting question, isn't it? So we're the 4th largest employer in the world. Who are the comparison organisations other than the Chinese army with some similar kind of scale and size? So I think what we need to think about is what there are some obvious sort of dimensions. So scale, a dispersed system, independent employers, but there are also other comparisons. I think we should look at kind of purpose-led organisations at large scale and what we can learn from those. I think we can learn from other public sector organisations that have gone through these sort of changes. So the civil service is an obvious one. But the caveat I'd put around that is we need to be careful at drawing comparisons to work that's been done in other sectors that's been cost-based. So the civil service went through a large-scale change, which was essentially driven by a desire to reduce their cost base by 40%. That isn't what this work is about. This is about us thinking about the future over the next 10 years and potentially actually what investments we might require to make that future a reality.
Brilliant. No, thank you. That's excellent. And certainly your comments about the civil service, as some people know, I'm on secondment into the NHS from the Welsh Government. So I've got some experience of that change programme, and it does sound very different what you're proposing. So one final question then. So from Tanya Marie Robinson. So what do you think outside of AI will be a really impactful megatrend in how we work in the future, which will change the fabric of the healthcare service, and why?
So great question from Tanya, thank you. So I look at the videos that I've put on the presentations that we sent around, and interesting, I think probably if you'd asked me that a year ago, I would have said digital and digital health, and I think if we haven't seen that come through in terms of, and what I mean by digital health is I mean about kind of virtual treatment, virtual clinics, virtual diagnostics, all of that I think is the area where I think that there's most significant change going to happen. We've seen that right through COVID, haven't we? And I think that's a big area that we're going to continue to focus on. AI is the obvious one that people talk about.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Well, I think we've kind of abused your time enough. We've fired quite a few questions at you and sort of comments. So thank you for sharing. I'm conscious you're just transitioning to your new role. So, you know, it's a sort of difficult time, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate some time out to actually, you know, what's great about that is, you know, doing something like this gives you opportunity to bring your thoughts together. And, you know, I really genuinely hope that when you get to see the slides, if you couldn't see them on the screen, that you'll know what I was talking about, and also see the real offer to engage in the process that I want to take us through over the next 3 to 4 months.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And we've Joy has put the YouTube video on the chat bar in the side, and I know the slides will be available on these pages as well afterwards. So I think lots of love for you, lots of good luck in the new role, lots of thanks for sharing with us today. It's been a really insightful session, and I look forward to working with you in the future in some of this work. So thank you, Tom. And yeah, your daughter's got the tidiest bedroom I've ever seen. From Rafaela.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day. Bye now.
You take care. Thank you. Okay, colleagues. Well, that was an interesting session. Really good to hear from Tom, and good that he was happy to take all of our questions. So thank you for the comments and for participating. We've got a 3/4 of an hour break now, which again is an opportunity to maybe just grab a sandwich, but then to make sure that you visit the virtual exhibition booths and network with participants. I can see some colleagues have said in the chat bar that they've had some conversations in the first break and they were really fruitful. So please, please, please do go and support our sponsors and partners. We need to be back on the main stage. We need to be back in our stream breakout sessions by 12:45. There are 4 sessions: looking after our NHS people, systems thinking, compassionate leadership, and the power of data. And you should have already chosen which one you're going to attend. So back in those for 12:45, please. But in the meantime, go have some food, network, join the booths. Lovely to see you. Catch up with you a bit later on.